Hey you guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking about the top 5 baits for bass fishing in August. August is a transitional month in bass fishing. So the beginning of the month and the end of the month can behave very differently. August brings the heat. I mean, it's hot, really hot. But towards the end of the month, in a lot of the country, you can begin to see that first cooler night of the year. And that really ramps things up and gets things changing. So trying to pick 5 baits for a transitional month across the country is very difficult, but I think we've done it. First up is going to be topwater. Throwing a topwater is going to be a major player in the heat. Depending on where you are in the country and the type of lake you're on, I want you to use one type of topwater or another. So you're either going to be throwing a frog or a larger walking style bait. If you've got a lot of grass, a lot of cover, here's what I want you to be thinking about. August in the heat, bass want shade. They want cover. So if your lake is shallower, has a lot of grass, the frog is a great option to get those fish because you can stick with topwater, but you can get deep in that cover and get those fish to come up out of the shade pockets and eat it. We use a bright, bold frog like this guy. That's the little Allen color that Tim and I designed. But a bold frog to get those fish to come up. If you don't have a lot of grass, whether you're a highland reservoir or a lowland reservoir, doesn't matter. Bass will still eat a topwater and they are still relying heavily on shade. You might find them on bluff wall shade lines. You might find them under docks. You might find them out on the color line, but a larger than average walking bait. So like this guy, the SB 125 is a fairly large bait and can be a great option for convincing those fish to come out of that shade and eat. That bigger meal is worth taking a shot at. So a larger topwater. The second one, I've got 3 moving baits, if you will, and 2 slower baits. So the second one is going to be a smaller swim bait, and specifically an underspin. Okay, the size of the bait should be dictated by the overall size of the bait fish you see in your lake. Whether that's fish spitting them out, floating dead, see them swimming by the boat or along the shore. However you see them, you want to match size accordingly. But traditionally, most of the time, I'll stick with a 4.8 Kitech. In murkier water, I rig it on a flashy swimmer, an owner flashy swimmer, so that it's weedless. I can fish it around grass. So the same place I'm gonna throw the frog, I want that weedless flashy swimmer with a 4.8 Kitech. The places I'm more likely to throw a topwater in open water, those are the places that I'm gonna lean more towards that 1/4 ounce cool baits with a 3.8 Kitech. Just a little smaller profile and an exposed hook. Here I need heavier line to set that big hook. Here I can go lighter line, so cleaner, clearer water, lighter line. But a small swim bait with a blade on it will attract a lot of attention and can convert those fish really, really well. The last of the moving baits is a jerkbait. And that can be a soft jerkbait or a hard bait. You know, advances in forward-facing sonar and live have really opened doors for guys to throw the jerkbait year-round. We've been doing it for years, but it's gotten even easier with live technology where you can look out, spot a fish, lead them with a jerkbait and get those fish to convert. I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes to how year-round a jerkbait is. The jerkbait traditionally fall through winter, early spring, but it has open water applications the rest of the year. So again, if you're throwing the frog and the flashy swimmer, you're probably leaning towards the super fluke or a soft jerkbait. I rig it on a 4/0 super line hook. The water is warm in August. That means that the fish have got a lot of power. if you hook a big one in cover, they can turn on the heat. I mean, they can tear you up. So the super line hook is important over just a regular EWG hook because it's thicker and stronger and you won't get bent out. But just a traditional super fluke, you can fish it depending on how you rig it. See how I poked out so close to the front of the bait here? That will cause the bait, that moves the hook slightly forward. It'll be a little more nose down when it falls, so it'll sink faster, meaning I can fish it a foot or two below the surface really well. If I take this bait and I poke all the way through and I come out in that belly cavity, oh, fish just blew up right here. Now I've moved that hook back a little bit in the bait. Very subtle difference. But what that has done is instead of sinking nose first, the bait will sink flat. It will sink much slower. And I can use this just under the surface or even jumping and hopping out of the water like a topwater. So just a quick little adaptation to a single bait that can let it do two very different things. So soft bait in and around cover, hard bait if you don't have that cover. Jackal Re-Range, Shimano World Minnow. Either one of these. The reason why I grabbed these baits is that they have an incredible amount of flash. Until the World Minnow came out, the Re-Range was the bait with the most flash that I had ever experienced. That's the bait that I could call them up from open water. But this World Minnow has even more flash. And when you stop it, if you can see inside there, see that shimmering? You should see that out in the sunlight. It's crazy how much light that little shimmering piece will throw even when the bait is sitting still. So with my hard baits, I focus on baits that will throw a lot of light, that will shine, because that makes them reach a larger area. So fish will come farther to get them. But a jerkbait is a great option. You can fish it in completely open water on the color line. If you're not familiar with that, we've talked about that in some other videos. You can fish it on bluffs, you can fish it down edges of docks, over the tops of points, but you can draw fish out of cover to come and get that bait. Now, two soft baits. Number 4 is going to be a drop shot. And same story, you're going to adapt it to your conditions. It was really hard to pick just a single drop shot bait. Well, I actually picked 2, but one for each type of lake. If you're more around that heavy cover, again, more grass, I'm going with a robo worm, a straight 6-inch robo worm. And I use that on the cover shot. Now, Owner came out with a cover shot HD, heavy duty, this year. So I would use that heavy duty hook. But just a 1/0 cover shot and a 6-inch robo is deadly because you can fish it in open water, but you can also put a little heavier drop shot weight and throw it right in the grass. Throw it right in there and pluck those fish straight out of the shadows that they're hiding in. It's a really, really good option. And then if you're more clear water oriented, big bite baits, the Smallie Smasher. This little guy with that flat tail is such a deadly bait. This I would throw on a nose hook, a size 1 nose hook, and you can be very aggressive. I went with the Smallie Smasher because that's a bait that shines with big movements. So some baits you want to shake them and let them sit. Other baits you just barely pull them, let them sit. The Smallie Smasher, I like to do a little pop of that rod. I love the way it looks when it flutters. So again, warm water, more movement, get those fish attracted to the bait, get their attention. That Smallie Smasher is really good for that. So that's the bait I would go if I can get away with a little nose hook. If I can't, I go to the robo worm on that cover shot HD. Last but not least is a Texas rig. And the Texas rig is so adaptable. I mean, you take a big hook, you put a weight on the line in front of it, and then you tie on your hook, right? And then you can put virtually anything on that Texas rig. Creature baits, worms, you can put all sorts of stuff on there. So a Texas rig will apply to any of the places that you might be fishing. I don't care where your lake is, a Texas rig is a great option in August, but we're going to adapt that Texas rig according to cleaner water with less grass or more grass, murkier water versus cleaner water. So if you've got a lot of heavy cover, again, frog, fluke, flashy swimmer, cover shot, because you're going in the grass, we're talking about punching with the Texas rig or flipping heavy cover. The size of the weight is dictated by how thick your cover is. If it's incredibly thick cheese, 1.5 ounces, it'll take that weight right through. That weight will go through, it'll pull the hook through behind it. And my favorite creature bait for punching, this has been my favorite bait for years, is the Jackal Archelon. I just love that bait when I'm punching. This color too, the gill color, is phenomenal. I do so well with that bait. So really heavy cover, we're talking about punching, or if you don't need that 1.5 ounces, maybe it's just reeds or tules or thick grass, go down to a 3/4. A 3/4 is a really good transitional size, okay? That 3/4 you can still flip with that Archelon. You can start mixing other baits in too, like the Paca Slim. 4-inch Paca Slim is one that has just exploded for me the last 2 years. That bait there. But these are baits that have a little bit of kick, but they also have just a great overall profile when they land on the bottom. They look really good. So I'm looking for baits when I'm choosing the bait for this Texas rig that if I'm in cover will not only swim as it comes down through the cover, but will look good when the fish run over and get to it. So great options there. The less grass you have, you can lean the other way. You can go to really small weights, right? Lose that 1.5 ounces, lose that 3/4. Go down to a 3/16. But you're doing the same exact thing. 3/16, I think, is the most overlooked size for a Texas rig. Years ago, people ask all the time, why don't Tim and I fish tournaments? I just got over it somewhere along the way. I used to be a tournament guy. I fished a ton of tournaments. I also chased trophy fish. When I was a tournament guy, it was a deadly technique that was so overlooked. I lived on the California Delta. Guys would be flipping heavy cover. Guys would be cranking, throwing topwaters. I would throw a creature on a 3/16 ounce weight around the edges of grass, and it was deadly. 3/16 is enough to get you down even if there's a little current, but it's light enough to let the bait flutter. It's a perfect balance. I think that is an overlooked size. So 3/16 with that same hook, you could throw that Paca Slim. You can, if you have less grass, go to the smaller Paca Slim. You could go to all sorts of different baits, right? A mid-size brush hog. There are a lot of really good options for a creature bait to put on that Texas rig. And then of course, you can also go the other way and switch to the worm. You can throw a big worm on that same Texas rig. So are your fish offshore? Are they deeper? Are they on outside structure? Take that exact same hook that fits great in the creature bait, fits great in the worm too. So it's incredibly adaptable. This is the 11-inch C-Mac, the NetBait C-Mac. So a great big worm, I can take my rod where I'm fishing up shallow, pitching around grass and edges, and if the fish just aren't having it that day, I can go out to the outside of long tapering points, creek channel bend, creek channel bends, ledges, take that creature bait off, put the big worm on, and go right back to work. It's very, very adaptable. So Texas rigging is number 5. Down in the video description, I'll link all these different baits in the order that they appeared to make it really easy for you to know which one is which. But between a topwater, a jerkbait, a small underspin swim bait, the drop shot, and a Texas rig, you're covered. August is a transitional month. You're going to see hot days. You may, depending on where you are, start to see those slightly cooler nights. And I mean slight. It is a subtle transition, but the change in the fish is instantaneous. As soon as they see a cool night, they immediately start to adapt, and they start going away from soft cover like grass and pulling to harder cover like wood and rock. But these are baits that you can make that full transition with and just continue catching fish. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.